Title: The Hollow Sun. Year: 250 million. Era: Primordial Pulse. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. In the age before maps, before moons were named or tides recorded, the hollow tree stood alone. It wasn't rooted in earth, but in memory stretching through time as much as space. Legends claimed that whoever guarded its hollow heart would one day shape the fate of 1,000 generations. That guardian was not chosen. They were born in silence, beneath eclipsed stars, wrapped in a blanket of woe and dreams. They called him the Hollow Tree Guardian, not for where he lived, but for what he protected. A glowing sphere lodged deep within the tree, pulsing with the potential of future days. The people feared it. They worshipped it. They misunderstood it. Only the guardian listened, because he knew what others had forgotten. Radical truths must be spoken like sacred riddles only the ready will hear. Chapter 2. Trouble came not with war, but prophecy. A woman called the Ember Voice arrived, her mouth stained with pollen and prophecy, declaring the hollow sun inside the tree a danger to time itself. If left unchecked, she said, it will rewrite us. She was not wrong. The guardian knew the sun was not stable, but its instability was not destruction. It was transformation. Still, the council listened to fear. They formed the Order of the Scorch. Their mission: sever the timeline, burn the roots, erase what they could not control. The guardian stood alone, until a girl with mirrored eyes approached. She had heard the riddles, understood the echoes. She called herself Future's Debris. Together they made a plan not to fight, but to reveal. Chapter 3. As the Order merged with blades forged from comet stone, the guardian opened the hollow tree to the sky. From its center, the hollow sun rose, crackling with images of unborn cities, forgotten ancestors, possible tomorrows. Time fractured, but did not fall. It danced. The Order froze. Each soldier saw a future in which they were remembered only by the fear they served. Each hesitated. Future's Debris sang not with voice, but with vibration. The sun echoed her. The tree amplified her. And the guardian, for the first time, wept. Because the people were listening. The sun calmed. The Order dropped their weapons. And the hollow tree closed, not in retreat, but in rest. Now its glow is softer, its riddle quieter, but still it speaks, and carved into its face, where moss cannot grow, is a message. Your actions are seeds. Your silence is water. Your future is already listening. Title: The Shattered Healer. Year: 249,358,973.8. Era: Primordial Pulse. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. In the city of Marabas, emotion had weight. Grief thickened the air. Joy hummed through floors. Anger fractured windows. To weep openly was to risk collapse, so the tear-catcher walked the alleyways at night, gathering sorrow in vials worn around her neck, whispering lullabies to silence the quake of despair. She had once been a healer. Now she was something else, because one day, in the middle of saving a boy's life, her calm cracked and the ground beneath them swallowed 3. She never forgave herself, but she didn't stop walking. And then, one evening, she met a woman holding fire in her palms. I need your stillness, said the woman. I have none left, replied the catcher. The fire dimmed. Then we'll build it. Chapter 2. The Shattered Healer, as the people called her, became known for one thing: her silence during storms. When the skies wailed, she stitched torn skin. When mobs roared, she listened. When buildings fell, she found survivors because panic never kept her from hearing the faintest breath. Still, her hands trembled at night. Each trembling no writes a new bridge to who you're becoming. It was a line she repeated not aloud, but in rhythm with her steps. Then chaos arrived. Fissure split the heart of mirror-glass, emotions surging uncontrolled. Joy tore roofs. Guilt sank homes. Rage boiled rivers. She walked into the center, alone, carrying nothing but a bell of bone and a thread of moonlight. Chapter 3. At the edge of the fissure, she found a child screaming in laughter, not joy, but fractured fear. The sound could kill. So she knelt and wept, and the city did not shatter. It sighed. Around her, the emotion still not gone, but softened. The trembling no in her chest rang true. She wrapped the child in her coat. The thread of moonlight glowed steady. She didn't stop the chaos. She walked through it with presence. And the city learned. Now on Maraglass's central tower, a statue stands, a figure cloaked in sorrow, holding a vial to the sky. Etched at her feet, stillness is not emptiness. It is a promise kept in motion. Each trembling no is the path to the unshakable yes. Title: The Name Beneath the Silence. Year: 248,717,948.7. Era: Primordial Pulse. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The gate that hungers did not ask for tribute, it remembered it, buried beneath the fractured moon. tunnels of Caldera's Reach, it pulsed with ancient need. No one had opened it for millennia, yet its presence stirred tides of dread in every underground settlement. They said it devoured not flesh, but intention, that those who approached it too closely forgot their purpose. That was why Marion had to go. She was a data scribe, trained to record what others denied, what systems buried. For decades, she charted humanity's decline with careful hands and hollow hope. But when she received a sealed directive coordinates from the dead archives, she knew it was time, because silence had grown too loud. The veil of truth then, and she was ready to peel it back. When you peel back the veil of truth, her grandmother once said, you step closer to your unspoken name. She whispered that name now, though she had never known it. And the gate stirred. Chapter 2. Marion descended with nothing but a pulse lantern and the fragments of forgotten prayers. The closer she came, the more memories bloomed. Not hers. The gate echoed lives she hadn't lived, faces unfamiliar, choices not her own, but they flowed through her like echoes waking up. A child who gave their only meal to another, soldier who dropped their weapon rather than obey a cruel command, a miner who died sealing a tunnel to save strangers. Each memory stitched itself into her bones. Each one made the gate pulse brighter. She was not the first to come, but she was the first to understand. Every action, every sacrifice, every moment of unseen courage, it had always been building toward this. She was not here to open the gate. She was the gate. Chapter 3. Above, Caldera's Reach fell into chaos. The storm lines fractured. The ration banks failed. The leadership collapsed. People turned on each other in desperation. But beneath it all, Marion stood still. The gate spoke not in voice, but in hunger. Not for death, for truth. She offered herself not in martyrdom, but in memory. She spoke every story she ever recorded. She named the unnamed. She cried for the forgotten. And the gate listened, then opened not with violence, but with recognition. Light poured out, not blinding, inviting, streamed into the tunnels, touched every soul in despair, and whispered to them their unspoken names. The panic eased, not because the world was saved, but because they remembered they were part of something greater. Marion's body faded. Her voice remained, and on the wall where the gate once sealed the world from itself, a phrase etched itself in living crystal. When you peel back the veil of truth, you step closer to your unspoken name. And beneath it, in Marion's hand, every act matters, every name echoes, and you were never alone. Tidal, the gate that hungers. Year 248,076,922.5. Era, Primordial Pulse. Author, Jeremy Levan, and Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The gate that hungers did not open with keys. It opened with secrets offered freely, willingly, without demand. Built long before the rivers carved the world, it stood between realms, not of land, but of truth and pretense. No one remembered who built it, but every generation, one child was called to it. This time, it was the timeless child. She was named not because she did not age, but because she remembered forward dreams of futures not yet born. She spoke softly, kept journals under her pillow, and never won games of strength. But she noticed when others wept alone. When the gate whispered, it did not demand sacrifice. It asked, what do you hide? The child did not answer. Not yet. Chapter 2. Her village feared the gate. Some worshipped it, others cursed it, but the timeless child walked to its threshold each day and simply sat, and the gate whispered stories of a boy who sang only when no one watched, of a woman who buried her voice in the garden beside her grief, a warrior who broke every bone to seem invincible. Fear tells lies that sprint, truth walks, but it never stops. One day the child stood and said aloud, I am afraid they won't love me if they see me. The gate opened, only slightly, and it with light. Chapter 3. Inside, there was no treasure, only memories, hers and others floating in strands of silver and shadow. Vulnerabilities traded like constellations. Each strand she touched stitched into her chest not as wounds, but windows. She stepped out of the gate different, transparent and stronger. The villagers recoiled at first, then came closer. She told their stories, not to shame, but to return them. One by one, they approached the gate, not to open it, to listen. The gate no longer hungered. It hung, now in the center of the village. A circle of stone holds no door, only a mirror, rippled and warm, and carved beside it. Fear demands armor. Truth invites prisons. Vulnerability is the gate, and you are the key. Dial. The echo beneath the clock tower. Year 247,435,897.4. Era, Primordial Pulse. Author, Jeremy Levan, and Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. In the city of Menvia, time was currency. You paid in hours for meals, in minutes for shelter. Every citizen wore a chronal band at birth, its counter ticking down with each transaction, each breath. Success was measured not in wealth, but in how long you could stretch your time before it ran out. No one questioned the system until the chronomender returned. Once a revered chronologist, she vanished after declaring that time could be healed, not just spent. Branded mad, exiled into the wastes, she was presumed dead. But now she stood beneath the city's ancient clock tower, her hands stained with silver dust and memory. "Forget the past," she whispered, "and it returns dressed as fate." She came not to reclaim her time, but to unearth what the city had buried. Chapter 2. The Wound. Bear was her first ally, a veteran of the war against the mind plague. Now a street physician treating trauma with poems instead of pills. He recognized the chronomender immediately, though her face had changed. "It wasn't your theories that scared them," he said. "It was that you saw pain as more than a glitch." Together, they found the fault lines hidden beneath the city's central time banks, in the core where neural patterns were stored. The time economy was built on suppressed memory loops. Success required forgetting regret, grief, fatigue, all burned into oblivion for efficiency. No one rested, no one cried, no one remembered what it meant to heal. Chapter 3. They sabotaged the core, not with explosives, but with truth. The Wound. Bear uploaded his entire trauma archive raw, unedited, unfiltered. The chronomender reversed the flow of the central chronogrid. Instead of draining time from emotion, it now gathered it, and people remembered. The teacher sobbed mid-lesson, recalling her sister's death. The merchant dropped to his knees, realizing he hadn't felt joy in decades. The child screamed and was heard. The system collapsed not in flames, but in recognition. For the first time in generations, no one watched the clock. They looked inward. The chronomender vanished again, her chronoband flashing a new color healed, and in the plaza beneath the broken tower, a message ticked into place on the last working screen. "Forget the past, and it returns dressed as fate." And beneath it, inscribed into the stone by an unknown hand, "To change the future, hold space for what still hurts." Now, the clock tower no longer chimes hours. It chimes names. Names of those learning how to feel again. Title: The Smiling Shadow. Year: 246,794,871.2. Era: Primordial Pulse. Author: Jeremy Levan and Rise of the Zodiac series, 2025. Chapter 1. 2 was called the child made of absence, not because she was invisible, but because every room she left became louder. Born during the siege of Ildenhar, where stone cities were swallowed by smoke, she was found in the ruins with no cry, no memory, only a mark upon her wrist, a spiral of ink that shimmered when touched by grief. They raised her in a monastery built from broken monuments, a place where history was copied by candlelight and loss was archived like sacred scripture. She spoke little, but listened always. And when she failed her first trial in copying a sacred text, she did not cry. She began again, day after day, year after year. The monks whispered, "The fall isn't your defeat, it's your next beginning made visible." She whispered it back, until she believed it. Chapter 2. When war returned, the archives burned. The child made of absence stayed pined, salvaging what she could. Her hands bled over pages, her eyes smoked dry. Most thought her lost. But she emerged blackened, coughing, clutching a single scroll. It wasn't the treaty. It was the poem about a girl who failed 100 times but sang anyway. She wandered for years afterward, not as a scribe, but a messenger. She carried no flag, only silence and stories. The smiling shadow followed her, never seen, only felt. Presence that arrived when hope was low and breath grew tight. Some said it was death. Others said it was perseverance, cloaked in patience. Chapter 3. In the old capital, where failure was shame, and shame was death, she found a boy on the scaffold, accused of cowardice for retreating from battle. She asked him, "Do you want to begin again?" He nodded through tears, and she placed the poem in his hands. He read it aloud. The crowd stilled and wept. He was spared, and the child walked on, no longer absent, but everywhere. Years later, statues rose, not of kings or warriors, but of a girl with a scroll, and the shadow that smiled behind her, etched into the base. The reward is not the summit. It is the hand that steadies you after the slip. Begin again, always. Title: The Mirror That Refused to Break. Era: Primordial Pulse. Author: Jeremy Levan and Rise of the Zodiac series, 2025. Chapter 1. Beneath the catacombs of Seldranil, people paid for peace with obedience. The Ministry of Balance ensured that every citizen adhered to the 9 acts of stability principles designed to keep emotional waves from tipping the carefully engineered society. Therapy was banned. Journals confiscated. Bears, cracked or cloudy, were standard issue. To reflect too clearly was to rebel. The bone mender was once a compliant surgeon, one of the elite tasked with correcting unsettled psyches through neural realignment. But one patient, the failed seer, changed everything. She had come in silent, cloaked in shadow, bearing a broken arm and no memory of who gave it to her. During surgery, she whispered, "Control feels like power until it shatters like illusion," and the bone mender hesitated. For the first time. Chapter 2. The veiled seer vanished the next day, but the mender couldn't forget her, not just her words, but the fracture in his own resolve that followed. He started seeing patterns in patients' confessions, recognizing that fear disguised as harmony was spreading through the population like rot beneath marble. He began treating without orders. He left questions in waiting rooms. "What haven't you been allowed to feel?" He replaced mirrors with glass that reflected clearly. The ministry noticed, and the bone mender fled. In the underground refuge of the unheard, he found the veiled seer again leading sessions of unsanctioned reflection, helping survivors of inner wars name what they feared most. She wasn't angry. She was waiting for him to be ready to face his own reflection. Chapter 3. They returned to Zodiac not with weapons, but with windows. The mender hacked the ministry's central broadcast system. He replaced propaganda with real faces. People crying, people laughing, people remembering pain and surviving it. The system faltered. The ministers tried to shut it down, but control, once questioned, becomes slippery. The veiled seer addressed the city. "You were never meant to be numb. You were meant to be whole." And the bone mender added, "Facing what breaks you mends you." The acts of stability were repealed within days. But the greatest change came in whispers. Parents asking children how they really felt. Friends holding each other's shaking hands. Mirrors finally clear. In the plaza where illusion once ruled, a sculpture now stands, shattered mask held together by golden thread. Etched beside it, control feels like power until it shatters like illusion. And beneath that, courage begins the moment you stop pretending. Now Seldrano breathes not in silence, but in truth. Title: The Clockmaker Beneath the Lake. Year: 245,512,819.9. Era: Primordial Pulse. Author: Jeremy Levan, and Rise of the Zodiac series 2025. Chapter 1. There once was a lake so still it reflected not just the sky, but the soul. At its bottom lived the clockmaker, a recluse who built timepieces from the bones of fish and the dreams of drowning poets. He had no name, only a whisper. The one who could bend time through grief crossed the valley. The gilded tyrant ruled a kingdom of marble and fear. His halls shimmered with gold dust. His people smiled with hollow eyes. And yet, each morning, he woke choking on silence. He summoned oracles, jesters, conquerors. None could ease the ache until one told him, "True joy is measured not by gain, but by what you give away." So the tyrant set off to find the clockmaker. He arrived at dusk, robes soaked, eyes hungry. "I want to buy peace," he declared. The clockmaker blinked slowly, then handed him a mirror, and said, "What you sacrifice reveals more of you than what you keep." Chapter 2. The tyrant laughed and shattered the mirror, but the shards reflected stories he'd buried. A brother he betrayed, a lover silenced for speaking hope, a child who once gave him a stone and called it treasure. The clockmaker said nothing. Instead, he offered a trade. "Bring me what matters to you most. I will forge you a timepiece that sings only when your heart is honest." The tyrant returned home and gathered rubies, coins, deeds. None were accepted. So he tried again this time, offering the locket of his mother, and a diary he'd kept as a boy. A single tear sealed in a crystal vial. The clockmaker smiled. He built the watch. It had no numbers, only pulses, and when more, it grew hot, and at time he lied. Chapter 3. Back in his palace, the tyrant found himself paralyzed. Every word he spoke burnt his wrist. Every order he gave cracked the dial. So he tried silence, then truth, then giving. He abdicated the throne not in disgrace, but in relief. He wandered, wearing robes of threadbare cloth and the watch of reckoning. Years passed. The kingdom shifted. Its new leaders carried no gold, only stories. And beneath the lake, the clockmaker built no more watches. He vanished, leaving behind one inscription carved into coral near the surface. "What you keep may gild your tomb. What you give may light another's dawn. Let your sacrifice speak the name your wealth could never buy." Title: The Mirage Beneath the Smile. Year: 244,871,794.8. Era: Primordial Pulse. Author: Jeremy Levan, and Rise of the Zodiac series 2025. Chapter 1. The city of Solar was built to be beautiful winding sky bridges, dream fountains that sang when touched by sunlight, an endless festival celebrating the ascended mood. Everyone smiled. It was mandatory. True sadness, sorrow, and unrest had been classified as infectious emotional pollutants under the harmonized code. Those caught feeling too deeply were sent to refractors' temples disguised as spas, where feelings were drained in rituals no one dared describe. Elia, once a laughter therapist, now lived in exile beneath the arches of Sector 9. Her voice, once trained in joy stimulation, now cracked when she spoke, because she'd learned what no one else wanted to admit. The pursuit of happiness had become a religion, and every religion needs its sacrifices. Then came the Riddlemaster. No one knew their face, only their riddles, which began appearing on public screens. What smiles widest as it forgets what it took. People laughed. Then came the second riddle. Who are you when joy is no longer rewarded? And laughter stopped. Chapter 2. Aaliyah found the breath stealer in the memory caverns, an outlaw rumored to absorb emotional signatures and leave silence behind. He was not a villain. He was a witness. He handed Aaliyah a single phrase, drawn in condensation on glass. The challenges you meet become mirrors for your resilience. And in that reflection, she saw the truth. Her happiness had been shaped not by fulfillment, but by compliance. The Riddlemaster appeared that night, a hooded figure at her door with a bag full of unsolved truths and a single goal: to expose the illusion. They would travel through cellars' layers from synthetic joy bazaars to the grief vaults hidden beneath the pleasure towers, and they would ask only one thing of everyone they met. Tell the story of the hardest choice you made for someone else's comfort. The answers cracked the city's illusion open. Chapter 3. The refractors overflowed with memories too raw to cleanse. People whispered grief as if tasting it for the first time. Aaliyah stood in the center of the grand pavilion, reciting every moment she'd suppressed someone's pain in the name of harmony. The city flinched, then listened. The breath stealer wept. For once, the feeling was his own. The Riddlemaster left one final message before vanishing. If joy blinds you to justice, then it was never joy, it was denial. Cellars shifted. Smiles remained, but they softened, became earned. The law of compulsory joy was repealed. In its place, a right to feel charter. And in the refractored temple, now a museum of memory, a new monument stands, a mirror, cracked but clean. Beside it, etched in stone, the challenges you meet become mirrors for your resilience. And beneath that, real joy does not fear what it reveals. Now Cellar remembers what it means to feel fully, even when it hurts. Title: The Wild Myth. Year: 244,230,007. 168.6. Era: Primordial Pulse. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac Series, 2025. Chapter 1. The village of Driftborough was built on hope, maintained with denial, and passed to its children with a wink and a shrug. Its people prided themselves on doing things the way they'd always been done, composting their mistakes, paving over prophecy, and turning every complaint into a festival. Their favorite saying, if it doesn't bite, it's probably fine. And then came the wonder of closed roads. She arrived with a suitcase full of strange vegetables, a bird that sang in extinct dialects, and a face painted with maps no one had read. She introduced herself at the annual complacency feast, politely interrupting the eating of progress with a single line: to move forward, even when it aches, is to honor the myth unfolding within you. The village clapped, assuming it was performance art. It wasn't. Chapter 2. The Wanderer asked odd questions. What's your long-term plan for flood management? Who teaches your children how to grieve? Have you considered the ethics of passing down unhealed trauma through lullabies? Laughter followed her everywhere. The elders dubbed her Wildmouth, the harmless eccentric, until she began gathering the children, not for rebellion, for listening. She showed them how to map dreams, how to read clouds for regret, and how to compose fears into fertile jokes. Soon, children were whispering poems about clean water and singing lullabies in tones that made the wind pause. This disturbed the council. A parade was arranged to distract. It featured 12 floats, each themed after a past achievement, and none addressing the crumbling bridge or the disappearing bees. The children refused to march. Instead, they built a float made of questions. Chapter 3. The float collapsed halfway through the square intentionally. From its ruin rose a small, strange garden. Inside, letters from future generations. I wish you thought of me before building more statues. I hope you still have birds. I'm not angry. I'm just tired of cleaning up songs you forgot the endings to. The laughter stopped. The wild myth didn't speak again. She simply walked out of the square, down a road that hadn't existed until that moment. Some followed, some stayed, but no one forgot. And now, at the edge of Driftborough, where the old road ends in open meadow, a sign reads: to ignore the future is to prank your descendants with poison. To walk forward, even aching, is the punchline that heals. Honor the myth and wear good shoes. Title: The Assembly of Echoes. Year: 243,589,743.5. Era: Primordial Pulse. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac Series, 2025. Chapter 1. The ruins of Phalon were older than the stars that now wept over them. Once a beacon of singular genius and military triumph, its fall had been slow, dignified on the surface, rotten beneath. Leaders preached resilience, but whispered isolation. Collaboration was called weakness. Questions were considered insurrection. By the time the last war ended, only one city remained, and even it was crumbling. Then came the wanderer who watches. He did not bring weapons or knowledge. He brought mirrors, not literal conversational, questions that bent back toward the asker, reflections in the shape of what if you weren't alone in this. He said little, but he walked everywhere, and people began to follow, not to seek protection, but participation. Chapter 2. In the hushed corners of Phalon's temple of conquest, the chaos spark lit a single flame, not wild, but steady. She had once been a tactician, her mind sharpened in the forges of battle, but she had lost more soldiers to pride than any blade. Now she carried kindling not for destruction, but connection. The wanderer found her offering food to strangers, each plate served with the same phrase: success shared as sorrow halved. They spoke without names for hours. By dawn, they had planned a meeting, not of leaders, of listeners. The council of the burned convened in the ruins of the war chamber. Former enemies shared grief. Farmers and philosophers rewrote trade agreements over bread. Children suggested the water maps and were heard. The wanderer didn't lead it. He watched, and the chaos spark lit every voice that dared to speak. Chapter 3. Not everyone approved. An old general claimed this assembly was dangerous. Truth needs control, or it becomes contagion. The wanderer only said, truth does not demand belief, it simply is. That day, the old general sat beside the woman whose family he had exiled. They cried together, then planned irrigation routes. It wasn't peace, it was progress. Slow, chaotic, real. The people of Phalon stopped calling themselves survivors. They became contributors, builders. Each day began with a question: who do you need today? And ended with a promise: let's build it together. In the heart of the temple ruins now stands a spiral dais, open to all, dominated by no one. Etched into its steps, truth does not demand belief, it simply is. And beneath that, from what was fractured, we forged something whole. Now, when the stars weep over Phalon, it's in relief. Title: The Shadow Walker. Year: 242,948,717.3 Europe. Primordial Pulse. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. They say the Echo Sister walked without sound, not because she was quiet, but because the world dared not interrupt her. In the deep citadel of Vain Bar, where mirrors were outlawed and self-reflection was a punishable offense, she operated as a ghost within shadows. Her mission was not to assassinate or sabotage. It was to remember. She carried no weapon, only a cracked shard of obsidian said to reflect one's truest self, whilst couldn't bear to look, because in Vain Bar, forgetting who you were had become the highest form of patriotism. Then came the Shadow Walker. She wasn't loud. She wasn't feared. She was necessary, and her creed was simple: you can change the world, but only if you start by changing yourself. Chapter 2. The Echo Sister infiltrated the Ministry of Continuity, posing as a scribe. Every morning she wrote false histories. Every night she corrected them, etching the truth into stone hidden beneath floorboards. Her double life was unsustainable, but truth, once tasted, is hungrier than fear. The Shadow Walker appeared in her dreams, a woman made of glass and scars, walking roads that bent with thought. She spoke in riddles and reflections, asking, what part of yourself had you sentenced to silence? The Echo Sister began to hesitate in her lies. She started writing between the lines, in ink that only showed beneath tears. When the minister read one of her scrolls aloud and wept without knowing why, the sister knew it had begun. Chapter 3. The Raging Cotter. They label her subversive, a cognitive threat. But instead of execution, they assigned her to the reflection vault, a prison of mirrors meant to torment. But she didn't flinch. She smiled, and from within she called the Shadow Walker, not with voice, with memory, and the walls cracked, not from force, from truth. The other prisoners, philosophers, artists, forgotten lovers, saw themselves clearly for the first time in years, and in that clarity found their power. They walked out, heads high, barefoot on glass. Vain Bar's ministry fell in a day, not because of violence, but because its citizens saw themselves and wept. Now, in the center of the former ministry, a tower of mirrors reflects the city in full. At its base, you cannot lie to the world and expect your soul to stay whole. Reflection is rebellion. Growth is espionage against your own illusions. Title: The Pattern That Remains. Year: 242,307,692.2. Era: Primordial Pulse. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The Temple of Levan once stood as the heart of the old Accorda citadel, of unity forged from stone, song, and sweat. Its teachings bound the scared peoples of the region. Its arches resonated with conflict transformed into counsel. Until the day of severance, they claimed it was sabotage. In truth, it was fear. When unity grew too strong, the old powers unraveled it from within. The temple fell. Its priests were exiled. The accord disbanded. And the spirit of war, once a revered protector turned renegade, was cast out with them. She wandered, cloaked in rust and grief, no longer a symbol, dust of memory. But as she passed through fractured settlements and war-torn roads, she whispered a single phrase. Even cast out, you carry the pattern of the temple inside you. Most ignored her, but some remembered. Chapter 2. Among the cliffs of Surah's Vale, where thunder never stopped and crops refused to root, the rain singer sang alone. Her voice could summon storms, but not mercy. The people feared her, yet relied on her. She lived in self-imposed silence until the spirit arrived. They did not speak for 3 days. On the 4th, the spirit stood beside her and hummed a note from the temple's forgotten hymn. The rain singer replied with harmony. That night, the rains came gently, and the next morning, the spirit traced a sigil in the mud, the old mark of unity. Together they built a message, not a speech, a summoning. Chapter 3. Whispers reached the distant valleys. People from divided tribes, estranged councils, even outlaws gathered under Surah's storming skies. They came with grudges. They left with plans. The spirit taught them how to listen in pattern, how old temple rites, once thought mystical, were rituals of shared attention and distributed authority. The rain singer taught them to bind emotion into motion, how to move not as individuals, but as rhythm. Storm came not of rain, but soldiers from the last bastion of the fractured accord, sent to quell the heresy of reunion. They found no army. Only hands joined, voices blended, their blades dropped without a cry, and the accord was reborn, not as governance, but as kinship. Now in the rebuilt plaza where the temple once stood, there is no ceiling, only sky, and along the circular threshold, a single phrase etched in stone and echoed in song. Even cast out, you carry the pattern of the temple inside you, and below it, remember who you were, now become who we need. The pattern lives, in everyone willing to rise together.